So welcome tonight to ADL's Never Is Now, where we're going to share some perspectives from FJMC attendees and Clark University Hillel. This is sponsored by the FJMC Committee to Combat Anti-Semitism. Tonight will be just a general session of those that attended the those that attended the ADL Never Is Now session a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago in New York City. Those folks will be Stephen Mandel, MD, Alan Cahan, and I'm going to let everybody um, um, introduce themselves. Alan Cahan, Mark Goldstein, and we have Ethan Quinn, Clark University Hillel. Uh, do do full disclosure, I'm a Clark University alum. So he's on here because he was there as well. And what I'd like to do is ask the those of us from FJMC who attended, give us a 1 minute introduction, and then we've got some questions and we'll go right into it. For those of you who'd like to ask questions, just please do so either by raising your hand or just putting in the chat line, whichever you are more comfortable with. All right, so we'll start with our youngest attendee here. Yes, that's you, Ethan. Could you please take a brief introduction of who you are, please?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Irv. So I'm Ethan Quinn. I am the former president of Clark University Hillel. I am a fifth-year master's student at Clark because I have a great fifth-year program. So I'm doing my MBA with a concentration in finance, and now I'm continuing on with Clark University Hillel as their community partnerships intern. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mark Goldstein from our Western region, please introduce and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everybody, I am Mark Goldstein, sitting in Thousand Oaks, California. I'm president of the Men's Club here, past regional board chair for the ADL Santa Barbara Tri-Counties, which includes Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and Ventura counties. I have attended Never Is Now in its current formation and in the old days when it was in San Francisco as well. It's a meaningful experience where you learn tools to deal with anti-Semitism and grow community. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Next, the illustrious and infamous Mr. Alan Cahan.
Far from illustrious and far from, I'm Alan Cahan, the immediate past president of the FJMC International, what we call the honorary president. And it was my honor to be able to attend my first Never Is Now, and see the a fascinating collection of Jews of all colors, all shapes, colors, and sizes, which is probably the most interesting thing about the conference for me. The all wanting to blot out the curse of anti-Semitism and learning skills and ways to do that.
Thank you from the modest Mr. Cahan, my mentor here in the Seaboard region. And Steve, Dr. Mandel.
Yes, hello. My name is Stephen Mandel. I'm on the National Commission of the Anti-Defamation League, serve in many committees, including international affairs, advocacy committees, education committees, and outreach. I'm also the vice president of the New York Metro FJMC Outreach and Engagement, and happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We had one other attendee, Daniel Gross, but he's unable to be with us tonight. And I was there as well, representing the FJMC Committee to Combat Anti-Semitism. And I am here in Fairfax, Virginia, from the, Seaboard region. So again, gentlemen, please, if you have questions in the chat or just raise your hand. But I have a series of questions which will start. So Steve, let's start with you. And for everyone else, I'll ask the same question. What were the reasons that compelled you to attend ADL? Why did you go there, and what were you hoping to achieve? Steve, if you could start us off.
Yeah, so there are 7 reasons why I attended, and what I hope will be a starting point for us tonight. So number 1 is to better understand policy and advocacy, to reach out to elected officials and leaders, promoting bills including the anti-Semitism bill and the nonpartisan security bill for faith-based institutions. Number two, community engagement. Look towards those in our community to where we can partner. Education. This includes not only in schools and workplaces, starting in kindergarten, in programs like No Place for Hate, but also education in regards to the right of individuals to attend colleges and universities without fear of hate and prejudice. Law enforcement. We have to understand what is the law and what is free speech. Technology, what the good and the positive aspects of it, what is misinformation and disinformation. We want to promote Holocaust education. We want to support Israel, and we want to have new alliances to adopt policies. So in each one of these, it's a call to action of each one of us, which we were inspired by way of the speakers.
Thank you very much for that. Ethan, what interested you and your fellow students from Clark to attend? What compelled you to go to Never Is Now?
So I had the fortunate opportunity to bring 8 students and 2 of our staffers to ADL Never Now, and I feel that it was just a perfect blend of bringing in that adult, young, professional networking opportunities for our students, especially to see like there are, Jews around the workforce. There are people who practice. There are people who are active in their communities outside of college, and I think it just gave a little bit of an eye opener. So that was a big part of it. And then on top of that, being able to be there with a ton of other college students, learn a little bit more. Most of the students that did already go and were already with us on that trip was they already knew what anti-Semitism was. They knew what it meant. They knew the nuances of it. They know our allies. They know who everyone in the room is. But it's an opportunity for them to hear from whether it's influencers, whether it's people like David Schwimmer. So hearing all those different voices, I think just gave us a little refresher. And that was a big part of it too, just keeping our eyes open, knowing who our allies are, knowing that our allies were in the room, and knowing that it's a great place to just be with people who are out in the workforce, who are out in our different fields. So I had the opportunity to meet with a bunch of different finance professionals, and we had students who are pursuing different education tracks. So being in the room with those people has just been, gives a little bit of nudge and a little bit of more connection to our community, whether here in America or whether finding our community abroad in Israel. So
Thank you so much. And I just want to add to what Ethan's saying. The reason we had a title here, inspiring us to take action, is it was very inspiring to see approximately 1,000 high school and college students at this event. To see them there interested, and it was just wonderful, especially on the second day when so many were there. So Ethan, thank you, and all your fellow students from all the universities, and a ton of high schools in the New York metro area were there. Alan, what compelled you to go for this time? You've been involved very much in Jewish volunteer work. What compelled you to attend ADL's Never Is Now?
Well, I think that what Dr. Mandel talked about is building community and interacting with other members outside the Jewish community to build a strong voice against anti-Semitism. If the only voice is Jews, it doesn't resonate as well as when we have members outside the Jewish community that are also speaking out. And I was impressed by the number of non-Jews and the members outside the traditional Jewish community that were there, in support of our fight. You muted yourself.
I'm going to pretend you're talking to me, though.
Right.
Sorry there. Sorry. And Mark, obviously you're involved with ADL. So what compels you and before and this year to attend Never Is Now?
I just find there's a great amount of power being surrounded by people with the same motivations. We all come from different backgrounds, and the diversity of people there, even though there is a diversity of people there, we all have a common goal, and there's overlapping goals and interests. And it's always educational for me, not necessarily what I intend to go to and see, but what I've learned over time is to see the diversity of people attending. Diversity, when I see diversity, each of you has a different lens where you're seeing that. Diversity could be there's a lot of LGBTQ plus people there. There's Hispanic. There's people of color. There's different kinds of Jewish people there, not just Orthodox or not just conservative, not just Reform. There's all sorts of kinds of Jewish people. There's Republicans and there's Democrats and there's progressives and there's conservatives. And then there's diversity of age that you mentioned. There's students and then there's people who have working jobs and there's people who are retired. And on top of the students, there's also teachers as well. So being surrounded by a diversity of people from multiple places as well, also the international aspects, so that we're all confronting the same issues with different ways and different lenses, but we can all learn from each other. And the primary reason I go is to gain that sense of community and the power from that, but also to learn the tools that we, as in our smaller micro communities and our towns and cities that we live in, what we can do then to take action. And we learn best practices or learn about things that have been done in other places, whether it's in Southampton or South Africa. But we can learn and then progress and then teach and instruct and guide our communities where we live to take those same actions to achieve the goal of building a better place for everybody.
I appreciate that. For me, my personal perspective and the reason I attended was since becoming chair of our committee, the brand new committee, as you all know, really formed a little bit around the last convention, that we have a partnership. And if perhaps not everyone is aware on this meeting link, that FJMC and ADL are partners together with United Synagogue Conservative Judaism and Women's League. And by partnership, we mean is that we work together and have capabilities and opportunities to work even more together. So as partners, we can share in that same message. We've actually been partners for a few years. I believe this partnership was put together by of Dan Granick of blessed memory. We had a speaker at the convention in Philadelphia, but now we're doing more things to leverage that. And part of what I hope we will do in this session and why I attended was to share how it is that all of us in our clubs, in our regions, could in fact together use the resources of ADL and have sessions, projects, whatever may be right for your club or your region in terms of combating anti-Semitism. So that was the main reason that I wanted to attend. And I think we reinforce that and we'll be having more opportunities which we'll share with all of you. So let me go back, Mark, again, when you were talking. Tell us one or two people that you met, where they're from and what type of things you may have talked with them and what do you think they were getting out of it? But just say one person that you met with.
Yeah, tying on to the last thing I mentioned actually was of a Jewish community in Australia. He happened to sit down next to me at a table and we chatted. He's also an attorney, so I'm an attorney as well. And the quality of issues that we're facing, and again, the diversity of ways we can face those things and how we confront them. So we were both part of a session, which maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it was like an 8-step session about how to have discussions with people who have differing views than yourself, with an effort toward better understanding and then building community and building a better overall environment for all of us. So he was one person that I saw a couple of times, and that's the power of this. Even though there's a couple of thousand people there, you walk around the rooms and you end up bumping into some of the same people over and over again. You asked me for one, but another one was I met a couple of people from, oh my gosh, I have to remember which city it is. But they were both from the same Jewish community center. I have to go see I took some notes, but I haven't looked at them yet. And I am a biased person originally from the Northeast, so anything below and south of DC is the same place for me. So those of you on here from Atlanta, forget about it. So I can't remember if they're from I can't remember if they're from Alabama or Kentucky, but there are a couple of people. Again, the diversity of the Jewish community, learning. Jason Hecht is funny, by the way. Learning from those around you that they are in a completely different part of the country than I am used to, and that they're confronting certain issues and what they're dealing with, and there's power in that.
So Mark having basically insulted most of the country in between the
Well, I'm in California now, so
well, that explains it.
yeah.
Alan, one person that you met and what you thought they were, what they got out of this experience?
Well, one of the people that I met who had been involved in the Seaboard region for many years, and then as a result of personal and health issues, he stepped away, and he was there with his two daughters, which was most interesting to the involvement really once involved, even when you don't see people, you'll find them off in other facets of we'll say the Jewish community and the Jewish fight for security and peace. So I found that Ed Rosenzweig was an interesting, individual. Talking to his daughters, one's in teaching, and it was really fascinating how people come back to the fore, even though you may have known them in one capacity, and that they're still part of the fight and still part of the larger Jewish community.
I've known Ed as well for a long time. I was very impressed that his grown daughters were there. My grown kids would never go anywhere near where I am. But that's another story for another day. Ethan, how about yourself?
So there are quite a few people that I had the opportunity to meet. One of which was a man named Philip Rosenberg. He is the director of the British Board of Deputies for British Jews. So the UK, one of the J7 nations, and it was incredible to hear what the experience is like for other diasporic nations. That was just across the board something that, not many Americans get to see. You're either American or you hear some Israeli perspectives, but not many, you might hear some Canadian here and there, but from the UK, and then also being able to hear him and his colleagues who are from South America, notably the Argentina, Buenos Aires area. So hearing many of the J7 perspectives, particularly the British deputy, Philip Rosenberg, that was very interesting to hear.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's just terrific. Stephen, one or two people that you met and what you thought their experiences were and that?
Yes, just to follow up with Ethan, people may not know what the J7 is. So the J7 is an organization put together by the ADL with representatives of the Jewish community in the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Canada, Argentina, and Australia. And all those people were around to sit at the tables with us. So that was one point. The second was that, I'll give you two examples. One was I went over to a group of children, youth, and the youth said to me, "We're proud to be supporters of the ADL." And I said, "Well, what's the major reason you're here today?" And the youth all answered simultaneously, "We're here because of Jewish pride." So one example I want to bring up is there was an award given which was the Klinghoffer Award. So if people remember the Achilles Lauro, and Leon Klinghoffer was thrown off of the ship. So for the last 40 years, there's been an award at Never Is Now related to the Klinghoffers. This year, their award went to the prosecutor for the bombings in Buenos Aires. And I went over to them in the evening, introduced myself, and it turned out that Leon Klinghoffer had a hardware store in New York on 4th Street and Avenue C, and I lived on 3rd Street and Avenue B. And I used to go to his store where he used to give out little chocolates after we each finished school. So it was a very meaningful sort of interaction with his two daughters.
That must have been a million years ago, Steve. Well,
It was as Ethan would say, is when we were young.
now I was very interested. Yes, that was very moving to see that there. Appreciate that very much. Um, uh, Ethan, in terms of the outcomes, can you tell us one outcome? Oh, actually, before I do that, sorry, there was actually a comment here. Let me ask that online, and let me do that here. I'll open this to anyone who'd like to answer. Did you leave the conference optimistic about the future of North American Jewry, or pessimistic about where we are today?
I think what gives us hope and what gives me hope is number one, education. Number two is sharing our beliefs and our as Mark said, our community of solidarity, our strength of the ADL and the FJMC, and hope that we never stop hoping, that we will. It leads us to drive to what we believe, and it gives me and all the people there, and it gives me hope, and it gives me hope to know that despite all the tragedies, fear, and uncertainty, that we are together just like we are tonight.
Anyone else like to comment?
Yeah, I want to give a little bit of a different spin on the question, which may address an elephant in the room, which is, there's a difference in our current administration and our government, and how they're allowing different rights to be supported or not supported, and it can be looked at different ways by many different people. And the ADL is taking a what they call a balls and strikes approach to that. So I was hoping there was going to be some sort of guidance or bigger answer, but it was a pragmatic, realistic approach, which is there's going to be positions that are taken that are helpful. There are going to be positions that are taken that are in line with the ADL belief system. There's going to be positions that are harmful. There are going to be positions that are divergent from the ADL belief system. And we got to call the balls when they're balls and strikes when they're strikes, and essentially cheer them on when they're good and boo them when they're bad. And we saw this play out in real time when Elise Stefanik spoke. So she's a New York representative who's possibly going to be, or probably going to be, the United Nations ambassador for the United States. And she gave a great roaring pro-Zionist, pro-Jewish, pro-Israel speech up to a certain point. And then she crossed the line. So she was cheered, and then booed, and then a certain number of people walked out. And in a smaller, limited setting, Jonathan Greenblatt made it a point to talk about the balls and strikes things, and then added on to that he was quite proud of the behavior of the ADL constituency. And even though one portion of that group walked out, other people were still cheering. So there's power in diversity, which kind of ties in with what Stephen was saying, is that there's hope for the future because there is this diversity and participation. I'm inclined to more want to just walk away from certain things that are more troubling, but we have to be in the room to have a voice and to participate. And I think ADL is they're doing it's a very difficult dance ADL is doing. And many of us on this screen agree with a lot of what ADL does. And a portion of us disagree with it sometimes. And a portion of us disagree with it half the time. But there's room for everybody. And it's going to be interesting to see how things evolve. But it gives me hope that we can all still come together and participate in settings like this.
I agree with Mark that Representative Stefanik was doing very well, and that last remark that she had made, we don't need to share that, I suppose, just threw it away, and but I will also say that relative to last year, as opposed to this year, I recall there were people standing up and yelling during some of the presentations, and people walking out and police coming in and taking people. I don't think I noticed that this year, so maybe either we all just want to be on our best behavior or the approach of the speakers was, well, a bit different. But I appreciate that. Uh, Ethan, one good thing that you saw as an outcome, and perhaps one thing that was not so satisfying as an outcome.
I think it left us with, as Steve said, just we are optimistic, we have hope, but also what Mark said with that pragmatic, it gives a little, I think it helped us eye our vision to be a little bit more tactical. And Mark said that the ADL has to play this little dance that, when you have a new administration, you have new politicians, or you have this leader versus that leader, and you have to play the little dance, and everything just has to be tactical. And you can be very optimistic. I have hope for the future. I'm very optimistic for the future, but you have to play your cards right. You have to put your tactics where the right words are going to be said. I did not like what Elise Stefanik had to say at the very end, but we have to be tactical with that. We have to see who our allies are. And Irv, I'm pretty sure you remember when they brought Jared Kushner. That was a lot of people had to complain about that as to why they gave him the award. And it's valid criticism of what an outcome of the conference is, but we had to recognize that he made significant contributions and there were efforts made. And I think that's a big part of it. I think that the overarching message is that we need to know who our allies are, even if we might disagree with them a lot on many different topics. So I think that was an outcome, is opening your eyes that we have to play these different tactics. We have to recognize different things and how to approach them. Especially when it comes to anti-Semitism, it's always shape-shifting. It's always something new. It was usury back in the 1500s, and now it's anti-Zionism and anti-Israel hate on our campuses today, and it shapeshifts. So I think having a positive and optimistic outlook is a must for our survival, and it's a must for how we approach anti-Semitism.
Well, my thought, Ethan, just commenting on that, it was certainly impressive that there were a lot of high school and college students there, but just so everyone knows, it was far less than last year because we still have these issues within our Jewish community, and ADL has this first Monday and Tuesday of March on this calendar, and Hillel International, and with full disclosure, I'm on the board of George Mason Hillel and a very close friend of Clark University Hillel. Those are my two. But Hillel decided to have a conference in Chicago on the very same time, talking about issues in Israel. Very important issue, and therefore many colleges had to choose one or the other. Clark, in fact, students attended both. So that was one of my disappointing things, that the organizations aren't as well there together for a number of reasons. So that is something we can still all work on to as much as possibly they can. We have a question here before we go on to others, and I'll open this up to anyone who would like to answer. The question is, was there any discussion, either in your private discussions or by any panelist, regarding Elon Musk hand gesture at the inauguration? I don't recall. Anyone recall if there was any discussion about that at all?
I think I blocked all that out if it happened.
Say that again, Mark.
I think I blocked it out if it happened. I think his name may have been raised in one session, but just in the context of how we have to work with the administration that is there to make a positive impact to represent I'm going to say our constituency, but our fellow members of FJMC, ADL, Men's Club, Synagogue, community, whatever word we want to use. And they're not going to hear our voice if we're not in the room. That was a powerful message. I think that one of the panels I heard that was coming out, I think that person was mentioned.
Yes,
Yeah.
what I found that was mentioned and spoken about extensively was the salute of Elon Musk, and whether the reaction from the ADL, which was up to controversy, and whether the ADL appropriately recognized the sensitivity of that salute, whether it was intentional or was part of a irregular movement. But the salute was felt to be a demonstration of something that needed to be called out.
And on that vein, what I learned in some discussions about that was that it may not be the intent of the person taking an action that matters. It may be the perception of the recipient that matters in determining whether something is harmful, hurtful, anti-Semitic, or hateful. And so many people that I spoke with said it didn't matter what he meant. What mattered is how many people interpret it, and then how it could possibly motivate others in other parts of our society, so that it should be called out to know that there are proper ways of doing things, or acceptable or not hateful things out there, and those should be applauded, and these things should be, barred, banned, or looked down upon.
And for any of you who want to know more background, John Zimmer's put in a link to an article which I imagine discusses that. Alan, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah. One of the things that we have to realize is that when we have allies in certain capacities of our faith and our community, we've got to realize that they may not have the same political views in all capacities. There were two people that were honored at the conference. One won an award. He was the ambassador from the United Arab Emirates. And the other was from the Druze community. And the question is, you frequently cannot pick your supporters and your allies on the basis of we'll say belief purity. And so what you have to do is you may have to hold your nose, or you may have to swallow your tongue, in that some of the allies' political opinions you may not agree with. But if they're willing to support you on this very major issue, then what you do is you accept them as an ally, and fight the good fight as a result.
To reiterate what Alan said, one looks at Chuck Schumer and his very strong relationship to the Jewish community and the ADL. And then you look at Congressman Mike Lawler, who's very supportive of Israel, and many of their policies may differ in regards to, but again, as Mark said, the ADL is attacked from the left and attacked from the right, but at the same time, they appear to have policies, or would like to have policies, that are in the center. And when you're in the center, you're being squeezed from both sides. And on the other hand, you need the courage to do that. And that's what the ADL does. And they make mistakes, and things come out that are not as you would like. But at the same time, overall, the organization is our strongest ally against anti-Semitism.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Ethan, going back on the college students who attended, and specifically Clark, what are the things that Clark Hillel may do, and what did you hear from other colleges there? What might they do afterward when they get back to campus to use this experience and these new contacts? Can you share some of that with us?
So a lot of it actually has to do with working more on the faculty engagement side, because a lot of things have kind of, at least on campus, kind of died down a little bit when it comes to like student protests and all those other, things that you might typically think of when it comes to anti-Israel hate. A lot of it has kind of spurred into faculty events, faculty responses, panels, speaker events, all that type of sort from faculty, actually. So we've kind of shifted our focus a little bit to focusing on that. And I think that the Never Is Now conference has kind of prepared us for that. because we haven't really put our focus to that until really to the conference, and we're like, there's just a lot of, we see like if you look at Columbia, there was Professor Shai Davidai, he was ousted from campus. There was another professor who had his class raided by anti-Israel students. There was another professor who taught a course, and those are from students, but encouraged by faculty. But we see that there's a Columbia course that's taught on Zionism by someone who is vehemently anti-Zionist and vehemently anti-Israel. So we start seeing where does it actually come from, and a lot of it has to do with faculty. So that's where we're kind of shifting our focus now after looking a little bit before going to ADL, but really just realizing that after going to ADL. So what was the other part of your question? I just want to make sure I address it.
What you'll be doing back at Clark afterward to take advantage of this relationship, and how you at Clark may leverage what ADL does together with things that your Hillel chapter would like to do.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to engaging with the faculty of our campus, but also realizing that we do have a lot of allies on campus. The other day I was actually with my roommate, and we were just going through which departments are our allies, which students are our allies, who we see as people we can engage with positively, and just whether it's getting them to come to Hillel, whether it's making sure that they're safe on campus too. That's a huge part of it, is just that huge reflection piece that our allies who are in the room, that we can meet with people, we can engage. So I think that's a lot of what we're bringing back to campus, is just that engagement piece.
Right. I appreciate it. Thank you. We have a couple of comments and questions here about further regarding colleges. And one was that there's a ADL scorecard on it, and comment from Richard Sternberg noticing vertical anti-Semitism. So this scorecard, let me explain that, because I did a little bit more research. ADL in the last couple of 3 years, before October 7th, but certainly since then, has sought to evaluate how different colleges are with regard to a number of metrics that they have. Most of those metrics are based on various anecdotal evidence. There's a certain amount of hard data, but a lot of it are comments, and then there's a group within ADL that makes those evaluations. And the list has expanded from 85 actually to a current 130. So two examples to give all of you is, one is that George Mason University was not on the original 85. They are now added when they went to 130. And what was their grade? A C. What does C mean? Well, it means that you're not an A, where A would have very little, if any, overt anti-Semitism or threats to Jewish students. What does a C mean? Well, if one looks at it and say, well, there must be some things that are uncomfortable. Now, the point of those ADL, that scorecard, is to advise universities where ADL feels they are based on their somewhat arbitrary metrics. However, if that scorecard is used by parents to evaluate where their students should go, well, I don't want to go to a C school, I want to go to an A. Well, but the whole point of that was not to say you shouldn't go to George Mason, which is a C, but these are things they should be doing. And then to contact the Hillel director or others and to see. And if you contacted our Hillel director at Mason, yes, we've had these incidents, but here are the things, excuse me, that we're doing that are improving it. Well, that's a positive. So part of now that you guys have asked this question, part of the issue between Hillel and ADL is Hillel is seeking to improve all campuses to make it safer for Jewish students. ADL's list sort of puts this red letter on them and say, well, why bother doing anything because you're a C, or even worse than that. Clark University, which has about, I think, a quarter to a third Jewish students, is fairly small, but not the smallest of other ones, is not even on that list. Why is that? No real reason at ADL. So what I would caution everyone, if you look at ADL scorecard, it is meant to be a guide to universities to improve themselves, and it should not be used as a way for parents and students to decide whether they should go to this school or or that school. So that's the part, and Mark has put in there a link to that one. And
Yeah,
that,
and if I could add as well, it's actually, I'll say a little bit maybe more candidly, it's a kick in the pants to the schools. You want to have a better grade. You want to show, and ADL's monitored how the report cards interpreted and changed it in a positive way to have like little, they not just give it a grade like A, B, C, or D. It's like a C, but with an up arrow. I mean, it's getting better. The campus is striving to do something, or a C with a down arrow. It's like it's bad, but they're not doing anything about it. So directly with these issues here, one of the local schools here, and the local will not talk to ADL. So regardless of what the grade is, it's never gonna go up because they're not playing the game. And I say that negatively because it's not a game, it's serious stuff, and they're not. This particular school isn't taking it seriously enough. And my daughter graduated from this school. It's like, it's good here, Dad. It's good. Why are we getting? This isn't right. Well, it's because there are some bad things that have happened and they're not taking steps to correct it so it won't happen again. So it can be really helpful, but it can also be detrimental if people look at it saying, oh, I'm never going to go to that school. It's a C. I can only look at A and B schools. But I don't know. It's interesting because you mentioned Hillel. Hillel's always had a running status of the Jewish community at different universities in the country that was super helpful. It has been helpful. Has Hillel been working with ADL at this, Irv? Do you know, or how are each of these two different groups working together or not working together on this?
Hillel does not put a report card on the colleges that are members. They indicate various data, the size of the school, Jewish activities, things of that type, but they don't rate them. ADL does, and that is the big source of contention, which is why Hillel, in my opinion, and I did ask someone else, an exec director, in a sense says, we don't care if we conflict with your session. We would like the students to come to ours. And if they don't go to UADL, so what? And that's a situation that none of us would like to see continue. But Ethan, who is a student, has a comment on it. Go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, so I just want to point out that there's also the Hillel International Campus Climate Initiative, which Clark is Clark is on their 6th cohort, but that is not as published as the Campus Antisemitism report card. Like if you search Campus Antisemitism, the report card comes up, maybe a Hillel listing or two comes up, but nothing significant outside of just the campus report card. And I think that is a core part of the rift between ADL and Hillel. Not that there should be a rift or there is a fully defined rift, but I can easily see something where, Hillel might not send students to ADL events, or they might not engage more with ADL. And that's something that I have a very deep concern for. So when it comes to campus climate, I think that there needs to be some sort of partnership, especially when, I'm going to be honest, ADL is not the boots on the ground. It is the Hillel. It is the students. And ADL, while they do a lot of work for students, and they're certainly doing more, whether it's inviting high school and college students to their conferences or doing direct outreach to universities and having reports and working with universities to handle different anti-Semitic incidents and engage with law enforcement properly. I think that is huge. But the boots on the ground are the students, and the boots on the ground is Hillel. So that is where I see that little riff with campus climate, campus anti-Semitism report card, and all these things just coming together. And I think that there just needed to have been better, had a better response from ADL and Hillel to do something a little more joint.
Well said, and we will make sure that our friends at ADL who are invited to attend and Hillel will get this recording, and that we can somehow facilitate them together through Ethan's good words. I have one more question here before we then.
One more thing I want to follow up on in this same vein, is that someone asked about were the protests on campus a coordinated function of, I think it was a typo, it was SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, something like that. One of the panels that we saw included two university presidents, right? One from Washington University in St. Louis, the other one from the University of Michigan. And what I learned on that was, and one of you please correct me on this number, but a significant majority of those people who were camping out on the campuses were not students. They were outsiders who came in. Some were bussed in, some drove in. I don't know if it was 75% or 60% or 80%, but somebody correct me on the number. But that was shocking to me. I mean, I always heard rumors about the numbers being that large, but to hear the university presidents explain it that way, to my mind, I concluded that, oh my gosh, these students are being poisoned by this outside toxic force. And how those schools dealt with it in a certain way versus how other schools dealt with it. But looks like Ethan wants to address it, and he can do it better than I can. So
Yeah, so that is a really good point to make, especially when it comes to how protests actually form, especially on the larger universities. But what happens on the larger universities eventually comes to the smaller universities. And at the smaller universities, I can tell you from experience, it is 80 to 90% students, not off-campus agitators. Sometimes there might be like someone from DSA of Worcester at Clark, but a lot of it has to do with students. And that is a reality that can't be ignored. So like Columbia, yeah, you might have like 50, maybe 60% off-campus agitators, or even since it is a private university, maybe even 30% off-campus agitators to 70% students. Or we're at WashU St. Louis, it was 70%. U Michigan, 70, maybe upwards of 80% non-students. But when it comes to the small universities, where it can be 2,300 students on campus total, maybe 150 are at a protest, almost 90 to 100% of the student, 80, 90, even upwards of 100% of the students are students in the protest. They're not off-campus agitators. So, and that is a call for concern, because a lot of universities might dismiss it as, oh, they're off-campus agitators. We can try and kick them off, but we're a public university, or yada yada yada. If they are a public university, but if they're private, they can't kick them off. But I think that can be very dismissive, especially of the public universities. Just say, oh, some of them are off-campus agitators. At the end of the day, they are still agitators. They're on the campus. They are the protesters. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on it.
We have one question, but I wanted to get to a student. As to university students, what is your view of the solution? Is the answer education or opposition? That's a really big question. That would take a long time, so let's pass on that one for the sake of time. That's a very long kind of a topic to do. So with the time left, we're actually at the time, but we'll take another few minutes. Could I ask each one of you to summarize 2 ways in terms of your experience and what you learned from here and how you would talk to people about anti-Semitism? So did you learn this at ADL, and any other closing remarks you would have about talking to people about anti-Semitism, and what you think we all could do within the men's clubs to follow up on with our partnership with ADL? So Mark, how about we have you start off on that?
Let's see. Yeah, the last thing you said reminded me that one of the things that we do here in our region, in our synagogue, is we invite the regional ADL leader to come speak every 2 or 3 years, and that is usually hosted by the men's club at a Sunday brunch. Sometimes it can be at other times. That's one way to make sure that people in the community know what ADL offers. There's a variety of educational programs for students and teachers that in our region ADL gives and provides as needed, when sometimes in response and sometimes just as a regular program. A lot of what ADL does is serve as the fireman. When there's a problem, there's a fire, you call the people to put out the fire. On the other hand, you can actually have education in advance, like we have here. We have to do pre-fire season clearance or pre-hurricane season clearance, or whatever you do in Florida and in Louisiana. So ADL does both of those things really well. We want to make sure the community knows about that. So as part of the men's club, we bring ADL into our synagogue. That's one example.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Alan, how about yourself and what you think clubs or regions can do to follow up and final thoughts?
I think primarily is continuing the conversation, both within the community and outside the community. And this means one, listening, and defining the ground rules that both sides will have the opportunity to talk, and so that we can develop communication. Because without communication, literally everybody, has their own beliefs, as I sometimes say, don't confuse, my mind is made up. Don't confuse me with facts, and unless we really can continue the communication with it, both within and outside of our community, this issue will continue to fester.
Terrific. And a plug-in for Seaboard, that we have done some of these things. And in fact, at our last retreat last year, we had various sessions on anti-Semitism, not with ADL, but with some other organizations. And we hope to show that as a model to other regions that we can do it. And now with the closer relationship with ADL, Seaboard hopes to do more of that, not just the regional level, but perhaps at the club level. And I like what Mark had said about your club out there. Ethan, in terms of other work and your final thoughts on what you experienced at ADL?
Yeah, I think Mark and Alan, they took the words right out of my mouth. Everything has to do with communications, everything has to do with partnerships. There was that question earlier about I'm trying to find it. The answer, education or opposition. It really depends on who. Who are you opposing? Who are you educating? Who are you trying to target? Who are you trying to make sure is heard? And that's what ADL helped us give the insight into. Who can we listen to? Who can hear us? Who should hear us? Who do we need to get across the table with? Who do we need to sit at the table with? And I think that's what ADL was all about. So that's kind of my little remarks. And you all took the words right out of my mouth when it came to communication and partnership. So thank you.
Thank you. And Steve, your final thoughts and especially the question about how to talk to people about anti-Semitism, but your final thoughts on the conference?
Yes, so I think the conference was outstanding. We didn't mention Jonathan Greenblatt's keynote address, where he talked about that we're in a state of hate and that we are in a state of fear. Since October 7th, the number of anti-Semitic incidences have increased by 360%. 360% since that date. So how do you talk to somebody? Number one, you tell the people how it affects you personally. Number two, you get together with those who are your supporters and know who are your allies. Don't compare the bias with other groups. Limit it to anti-Semitism. Tell people what Israel means to you. And maybe instead of using the word anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism, indicate, what are people saying? Hatred of Jews, elimination of Israel, from river to the sea, and indicate that Israel does have a right to exist. So, in the most important statement, not important, but what got to me was Gal Gadot. When in her last speech, she said the following: "My name is Gal, I'm an actress, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm an Israeli, and I am Jewish. My name is Gal, and I am Jewish," and was not afraid to speak up. And that is where our strength lies going forward.
She was terrific, inspiring, but at the same time, that a person who's that accomplished nonetheless has to say, "I am Jewish," says a lot about that. But thank you, Steve, for those remarks. So I appreciate that all of you are on. Again, apologies that we had a little problem in connecting. I want to just put a couple plugs in for future webinars. In April, we are putting a program together to commemorate Yom HaShoah, and we're hoping to have a survivor talk to us, and that'll probably be in the week or so before Yom HaShoah. Hopefully, all of you have ordered your candles. If not, go for it. And if not the candles, the yellow candle app. That will be great. So we'll do that. And in May, we expect to have a session on the U.S. military and anti-Semitism as well, in terms of its evolution and how it has come to be today. So those are upcoming webinars. If you have not yet registered for our convention over the 4th of July, a weekend in Chicago, much better time to be there than in the winter, no offense. But our anti-Semitism committee is going to have 3 workshops there. One, a pre-conference workshop on the Thursday, the 3rd of July, by the Spiritus Institute, which is located in Chicago. And they have a program, excuse me, on providing certification for professional lay Jewish leaders to combat anti-Semitism. And then on Shabbat afternoon, we'll have 2 sessions as part of Geffen Institute. One will be with ADL, who will look at training us in Advocacy 101 to combat anti-Semitism. And Stand With Us, who will talk about college, not just colleges, but about Gen Z. So middle school, high school, and colleges as well, in terms of combating anti-Semitism. So we hope that many of you will be able to make the convention, and that you'll make webinars as well over the next couple of months. With that, I'm
Hey,
so
Herb,
glad that
can I
we had a
make,
good audience
can I make one
tonight.
more announcement?
Yes.
We're in the middle of the Zionist elections. It is very crucial that each of you vote for Slate 17, Merkaz, if that is where you are. It's critical. This is about the future of Israel, where it's going to go. It's about funding to non-religious streams. The Orthodox are coming out in force to take the money away that we've earned over the years. In the United States, the election is going on now. In Canada, the election will go on in early June, Stan, if I'm not mistaken. We need you not only to vote, merkaz.org, go sign up. It costs $5. It takes 2 minutes. Vote. Get all your friends to vote, all your family to vote. It is critical. Please help us.
I was, in fact, almost about to call out Mr. Greenspan to comment on it, but Tom has. But Stan, would you like 30 seconds?
No,
There you have it. So
no. I mean, look, we could go on for hours about why you have to do this. Just remember one thing: if we decided to all move to Israel tomorrow, and we decided we wanted to set up our own shul called Beth Suris someplace, okay, we have to reach into our pockets and pull every dollar out that goes into that shul. If we were there as an Orthodox congregation, we call the government, we say, we want a shul, Beth Suris. They say, where would you like it? How much room do you need? What kind of chairs do you want? And they pay the rabbi. Big difference. That's something we have to work towards fixing. Israel is the only place in the world where Jews are discriminated against legally.
well said and clearly said. So that should be motivational to all
Vote
of
for
you.
Merkaz.
And for those in the US, please send the registration for signing up to vote. It costs $5 US, not a big thing. And the more you can do it. We were at a presentation at our shul about this. And last time there were like 15,000 votes. And they say, if we don't get at least 30,000, this is just the US alone, then Merkaz, then some other parts of our Jewish family will be overwhelming us, as Tom had mentioned. So
You need 50,000, Irv. It ain't gonna help.
well,
30 is not enough.
let me rephrase that. 30 is not enough to double it. We need to triple from 5 years ago. So we will do
I
our
mean,
best.
the stuff that's coming out. We had an ad come out from one of the groups saying that they wanted money from the World Zionist Organization so that they could make sure their kids who are in yeshivas do not have to serve in the army. They're going to use Zionist money for anti-Zionist purposes. You can't let that group take over.
Well said, Mr. Greenspan. And so everyone, please share that with everybody in your shuls, your regions, your clubs, on top of all the messages that you've gotten from FJMC. This was lovely to have you all on, and see you at our next webinar next month.